Right now, you're probably thinking, did I click on the wrong video? Nah, but you're probably wondering, what's with this getup? Well, someone on my Anthem review said that I was Discount Jim Sterling. And you know, that's wrong, and I find that offensive. I am not Discount Jim Sterling. I am Bootleg Jim freaking Sterling, boy! I originally thought that Crackdown 3 was supposed to be an Xbox One launch title, but I don't think you could blame me. This game's been through development hell like crazy, and they didn't even announce it with much fanfare when it was released. At least with The Last Guardian, they said, hey, it's out, buy it, and all that other stuff. But with this game, they stealth released it. Clearly, someone was ashamed of the final product.
I never played the original Crackdown or Crackdown 2, except for maybe 20 minutes of the first Crackdown's demo when that was released on the Xbox Live Arcade, because I saw a friend play the demo that was packaged with Halo 3. I wasn't that interested in it, because at the time, open world games just didn't really grab my attention. I'm more interested in them now than I used to be, but they have to be like how Spider-Man is. Crackdown 3 was announced in June 2014 and was slated for a 2016 release, only for it to be pushed back to 2017, then 2018, and finally 2019. It was supposed to take advantage of the Xbox One's cloud computing for destructible environments, essentially being the reason why the Xbox One needed to be connected online at all times. Spoiler alert, it only happens in co-op from what I heard. Although that's probably not gonna matter once we get deeper into this review. Graphically, the game is pretty good. It uses realistic looking people, but gives them bright colors and a black outline on their bodies. The world is just as bright and colorful and very futuristic, but also too cartoony. The game runs at a pretty stable 60 frames per second, but it's not all that well optimized for PC, as at times where the game sort of freezes for about a half second then goes back to normal, even when there's nothing happening. The sound is forgettable. It's pretty standard for your sci-fi enhanced soldier type of game. They really missed an opportunity to use Terry Crews, who the Jackson avatar is modeled after and voiced by. Terry Crews was kind of the selling point during development. I love Terry Crews, and that's why I chose to play as the Jackson avatar. And that's one of the many problems this game has. You're not playing as characters that play a part of a story. These are just avatars that have no bearing on the story at all. There's some gameplay benefits to playing as certain avatars, like bonus damage for certain weapons. And the control layout is just weird. The only normality is that the left joystick moves and the right one moves the camera. A jumps, left trigger locks on, right trigger fires. LB reloads and RB uses grenades. And that's about it. X picks up items, Y switches between primary and secondary weapons, holding Y will switch to a third weapon, B does a melee attack, clicking on the right analog stick will also jump. Weird. Clicking on the left analog stick will do an evasive roll, and up on the D-pad summons a vehicle when you get that ability to do so. It makes me wonder why they didn't have the D-pad left and right switch weapons. Have the B do a dodge roll, have X be melee and contextual for picking up stuff. I mean, that would be something more traditional, but these controls as they are, it feels weird, like a DOS game that isn't meant for a controller trying to use one. There is a noticeable delay when it comes to controls, melee being the most infamous, ranging from half a second to a full 2-second delay. I timed it. The game has also switched my weapons without my input, and there's times where I went to pick something up or interact with something, and there was a delayed response or none at all. Climbing is a nightmare. Remember those Knuckles and Rouge sections from Sonic 06 where they would get caught on the walls? Well, that happens here. Not as bad, but it is annoying and brings up those terrible memories. And climbable surfaces really blend into the environment too, making it difficult to tell what you can and can't climb on. The lock-on system only works when it wants to and how it wants to. It'll lock onto things you don't want it to lock onto, which is usually the furthest away target. It won't lock on to other enemies unless you're constantly tapping the left trigger in an attempt to lock on to what you want it to lock onto. Health bars don't display the amount of damage correctly. When dealing the final blow, the game will fade to black before the last 3 chunks of the target's health is gone, and then it'll play a little cutscene. I've been hit with pea shooters constantly, and then all of a sudden a massive chunk of health or shield will just drop off. There's weird physics, like the character dodging faster than normal after hitting the ground happens randomly, as are faster air dodges as a result in longer distance being covered. You can dodge into thrown objects without getting hurt and you'll just be pushed along the ground harmlessly. The pulse rifle is the most broken weapon in the game from what I've used. You get a ton of ammo for it and it does a lot of damage very quickly, especially against all the cannon fodder that the game will be throwing at you. Once I got it, I never dropped it. The combat is You know those swarm or horde modes you have to do in certain games where you have to fight waves of enemies? Well, that's this game. You go from location to location, clear it out, then the boss becomes vulnerable, and then you defeat the boss, who is surrounded by endless enemies, and you don't even have to clear out all the enemies for those areas. You can just kill the main target and the rest will drop off. The only way the game tries to increase the challenge is by throwing more enemies at you. But like I said, go after the main target and the battle will be over. And that was just to get to the first boss, which is an AI that controls the trains. And that boss? Just a horde mode where you need to attack the AI's core. First you gotta take out the 4 supports, and then you take out the core itself. And even if you die, you don't have to start over, just pick up where you left off. So I would destroy a support beam, die, destroy another, die, and repeat the process until the boss was dead. So I decided to go for another boss. And what is it that I needed to do? Destroy machinery as hordes of enemies come after me and try to stop me. It's the same thing I needed to do for the previous boss. But this one has a slightly different mechanic where I have to drain his health then destroy a core because he uses that to replenish his health. Does it matter how long I wait? Not really, because I fell into the area below the boss section as soon as he started to recharge, and I had a very hard time getting back up. I think it's based on how much damage you do to the core, because I was down there for about 15 minutes. So I beat him, which makes another boss available. And what's this one like? Well, the journey there is just like the tower for the first boss where you face hordes of enemies, and when you fight the boss proper, he teleports around and you damage him and there's enemies all over the place. It's a very wash, lather, rinse, repeat formula, and not in a good way. From the way this feels, you can tell that they had some issues during development, where they must have just kept changing things over and over to the point where they didn't have a game, and Microsoft probably gave them a deadline that the game was supposed to be shipped regardless of state of completion. Pretty much like what happened to Anthem, as was told by developers that worked on it. The story isn't all that interesting. You're tasked with freeing the city from under the rule of some lady and her subordinates. The dialogue isn't worth listening to, especially the guy from the agency who sent you there. He gets really annoying after a while, and he's supposed to be funny because of how serious he is, but no, he's not. It's probably a good thing that they stealth released this game. If they had marketed it like how all other AAA games are marketed, then they would have probably lost a lot more money than they already have. Which would have been foolish, as this game is probably the death knell for the Crackdown series.
If Anthem is a minimal viable product, Crackdown 3 isn't even viable. It's not even a 0 on the number line, but trending towards negative numbers. It's an empty box of cake mixes, what it is, but through some manufacturing error, it got put on the shelves. And I am never wearing this outfit ever again.